Welcome to the Shane Plays review of the newest 5th edition D&D adventure campaign, Tomb of Annihilation. There it is in all of its glory, looking pretty like all the 5 ebooks. That's a Serac on the cover, right there, archlich extraordinaire. So let's see what this is all about. I think to kind of sum it up, to kind of set the tone, let's take a couple of quotes from the foreword by Chris Perkins. Tomb of Annihilation is a story about death and the lengths individuals will go to avoid it. He also says in the foreword, rest assured your playtest characters didn't die for nothing. So if those two quotes don't make the point, Tomb of Annihilation looks very dangerous, but it also looks like a heck of a lot of fun. So let's check it out. And I want to mention that this video is a companion to a written review that basically says the same thing on my blog at shaneplays.com. But the written review on the blog also has a photo gallery you might want to go check out. And I'll put the links in the video notes here on YouTube. So make sure to check that out. So here's the synopsis. I wrote this myself. In Tomb of Annihilation, an intrepid, likely doomed, party of adventurers quest on behalf of a powerful yet dying mage and soon finds themselves embroiled in a deadly adventure in the forbidding jungles of Cult, and ultimately the deadliest of dungeons, the outcome of which could affect death itself worldwide. And oh yeah, there's dinosaurs. So here's the numbers to break it down. Cover price is $49.95. Likely get it cheaper at your FGLS, Friendly Local Game Store, FLGS. Obviously, you can get it cheaper on Amazon or something like that. But please, folks, support your Friendly Local Game Store if you have one. They do more than just sell product. They also foster community and are a very important part of this hobby that we hold so dear. So it's 256 pages for the book, 5 chapters, 6 appendices, 2 character backgrounds, which are anthropologist and archaeologist. Now, there are no new classes, spells, or feats in this book, but there are those 2 new character backgrounds. There's 8 new flora and fauna, 7 magic items, including 2 artifacts, 59 monster and NPC stat blocks. I want to point out that several of those monster stat blocks are reprinted from Volo's Guide to Monsters, so I want to make sure that that's clear. Yeah, there's 59 monster stat blocks. Well, yeah, but some of them are reprints from another source book that came out recently. 9 trickster gods. Here's the trickster gods right here. Let's see. 9 trickster gods. And they are right there. There's 24 handouts, and the handouts are pretty cool. They're also in the back of the book, and there's 2 to a page. And there's 24 of these bad boys, so I guess, 12 pages worth? Guess you can photocopy them and cut them out or chop them in half or whatever, hand them out to players. I love that kind of stuff, and I think it helps engage the players more into the adventure. I love to say, here you go, and you hand players something. That's always great. Nice touch. There's also a fold-out map of Cult. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm assuming it's Cult and not Chult or something, so we'll go with Cult. The jungle peninsula, the famous jungle peninsula of the Forgotten Realms, and it's pretty big, as you can see. It's in the back of the book. It attaches. It's perforated in there. And what's cool is on one side is for the DM that has everything, and on the other side, not everything's filled in, so the players can kind of fill it in as they explore. And also one of the handouts in the book is a smaller version of this. So you could, and it's the one that's not all filled in for the players. So that's pretty cool. All right. There's lots of rampaging dinosaurs. That's pretty hard to beat. A whole bunch of undead. And there's areas on the map that are like lesser undead and greater undead. There's undead everywhere. There's one killer dungeon designed to attract foolish adventurers to their dooms like flies to honey. And there's one extremely ill-tempered archlich who designed a killer dungeon to attract foolish adventurers to their dooms like flies to honey. So those are the numbers. Now, I want to say kind of at the beginning, I do a lot of these reviews, and I try to get them out fairly quickly when new core rule books or source books or adventures come out for D&D. You know, this book doesn't even street for another 5 days or 4 days. So I have obviously not had a chance to run a party through this adventure. So this review is intended to kind of give you an idea of the feel of the adventure and what you can maybe find, to give you kind of an idea of the tone and the feel and everything would be a good fit for you and your group. I kind of try to strike a balance between getting information out quickly and giving a good idea of the tone and the quality of the adventure without giving out too many spoilers, because I want everybody to be able to watch this. Because, hey, maybe tell your DM about it. I want to play this or whatever. This is not an in-depth super review that goes into every possible room of every dungeon and all of that. Okay, it's more of a kind of a broad strokes overview of what you would find in Tomb of Annihilation. So I just wanted to point that out. I should have been pointing that out in my previous reviews and stuff, and I got to think, some people are probably like, oh, review, and they look and they click on it and they're expecting this mega in-depth, like, well, when I ran book or room 4C of this, this was wrong, and I don't go into that level of detail. This is just kind of give you a taste to think that if you'd want to play this adventure or not. So now this adventure does have some history to it. So like Curse of Strahd took Ravenloft and really ran with it, Tomb of Annihilation takes the story of the classic and extremely well-known and famous module Tomb of Horrors, and it creates this entire like jungle plus dinosaur plus undead infested campaign thing, and it builds it around the archlich Acerak and his foul plans and his new killer dungeon. So if you're not familiar with Tomb of Horrors, go check out the blog post at shameplays.com, because I kind of give a little snippet of the history from Wikipedia, and it was originally written in 1975, and it was intended to be a very tough, challenging, lethal dungeon by Gary Gygax. So it's considered one of the most lethal adventures ever created, and it's fondly and not so fondly remembered by many gamers of yore. So obviously, it's the perfect inspiration for a campaign-linked full adventure in 5e. So what levels can be annihilated? Well, the adventure is intended for 4 to 6 first-level players, and with them advancing to 11th level by the time everything is said, should they survive or succeed. Survive, really. Some notes on starting at 5th and 9th level are included, but it's nothing like Storm King's Thunder and Curse of Strahd, said, hey, it's a first through whatever level adventure, but really it was intended for 5 and up, and they had a couple of chapters in there that would get people to 5th level really quick. Tomb of Annihilation is not like that. It's genuinely intended first through 11th level, and it's also kind of interesting that that milestones is not really highlighted. The word milestone is never used in Tomb of Annihilation in the intro, introducing the story and how to run the game and everything, when it's talking about advancing characters' levels. I mean, Storm King's Thunder really said, hey, you can do XP or you can do milestones or whatever. And by the way, milestone them after every chapter and all that. Tomb of Annihilation never even mentions milestones. It does say that you can kind of advance characters at your own pace, at the DM's preferred pace, but it doesn't give guidelines on when to do that or anything else. It really talks about XP acquisition to level up almost exclusively. So it's interesting to me. I'm wondering if has D&D, the D&D team, received some flack or something over milestones, because they've really gone a different direction considering how much they talked about it in Storm King's Thunder, which was the most recent adventure right before Tomb of Annihilation. So I also want to point out that the introduction to the adventure does include a table that shows suggested character levels for each chapter, which is appreciated. And remember, there's only how many chapters in this one? there's only 5 chapters in Tomb of Annihilation, whereas I think Storm King's Thunder had like 12 or 13 chapters or something like that. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, as a DM, you can milestone if you want, but it's just not as laid out as it was in Storm King's Thunder. Now, the Peninsula of Cult itself, I think at different times in the Forgotten Realms history, Cult has gone from being a peninsula to an island to being a peninsula again, depending on stuff ravaging the land and spell plagues and this and that and the other. But now it's a peninsula again. I just want to point out that jungle, that deep, dark, terrible jungle, with its exotic beauty and its exotic danger and its peoples and its dinosaurs and its undead and shrines and all that. It's as much of a character itself is practically a character itself in the adventure. It's practically an NPC for all the atmosphere and personality it brings. It's like it's like the jungle in like a Tarzan movie, or even in Gilligan's Island. There's actually been theses written about how the island itself in Gilligan's Island was like another Castaway. It was so much a part of the show and had its own personality, and it wouldn't have been the same show without the jungle, the island, right? So. But it's beautiful. It's dangerous. There's delights and depths that are equally abundant, and there's both can have beauty. And there's 8 new flora and fauna that are added to the DM's toolbox in Tomb of Annihilation. Show it again. Just get that pretty book in there. Much like Out of the Abyss, really added a lot of like fungi and cool stuff like that to the ecology of the Underdark. That was one of the things I really liked about Out of the Abyss. The people in Cities of Cult, they have their own rich and exotic atmosphere, and I really think that Tomb of Annihilation would be a much different adventure and not as interesting to me were it placed in a more traditional area of the Forgotten Realms. I think it was a risk, but I think it was a risk that will be well rewarded on behalf of the designers and the writers and all that, to place it in the jungle, basically. There's true, and I hate to use this word, but I mean, there's synergy. It all comes together, and it's cooler than the individual parts are cool, and the individual parts are cool in and of themselves. So that jungle, that cult, that dinos and undead and this and that, and the fever of the jungle, and it really adds a lot to it for me personally. I mean, it's got me really intrigued now, and I have to say, I love. Go check out the photo gallery on the blog post, again linked in the video notes on YouTube, or just go to shaneplace.com and look at the Tomb of Annihilation review. I love the artwork and the imagery in this book. All of the 5e books, core books, adventure books, source book, whatever, have had fantastic art and graphic design and layout. I mean, that's one of the real hallmarks of 5e. But the artwork and the imagery in this book just got me really excited and fired up with all the atmosphere. And even more so than any of the other 5e books, with maybe Out of the Abyss being a somewhat distant second. Out of the Abyss did a great job of making the Underdark this vibrant, beautiful, although deadly place, and not just this deep, dark underground cave, featureless cave. They really brought it to life with its own beauty. But yeah, my imagination really got fired up and got going, just flipping through, looking at all the cool artwork, getting excited by everything. And I mean, that was before I even sat down and read it. It was, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. I mean, look at that. Look at that big dinosaur. I mean, it's just cool. There's just cool stuff happening in here. And I'm really impressed. There's a lot in here to fire up the imagination for both DMs and players. I really want to take players to Tomb of Annihilation. I really want to take them to Cult and let them play this adventure. So I thought when I'm running Out of the Abyss for my group right now, I had assumed when I finished that I was going to do Storm King's Thunder, because I'm quite taken with the story of and the feel of Storm King's Thunder, like what you're doing. But man, I'm really loving Tomb of Annihilation, so I'm pretty sure Tomb of Annihilation is going to be my next campaign to start. Plus, I like going back to first level every now and then, and starting it, because by the time we finish Out of the Abyss, we're going to be like 15th level. Now, Tomb of Annihilation is, in its own words, A time bomb adventure. It says that right in the book. Time is very much of the essence, with the players under constant pressure from the ticking of the clock and the deadly nature of the many dangers they will face. Not just challenging nature, deadly nature. All right, some players will thrive on this. Others will actively dislike it. So definitely take that into consideration when choosing whether to run this adventure. I mean, there's a definite time clock that you're on here to finish the adventure. Now, you've got time to explore some sides of, oh, that looks neat, but there's always this overarching, we got to get this done by a certain time. And the adventure itself, you remember those quotes I read at the beginning, is pretty deadly. The Tomb of Horrors was one of the most lethal dungeons ever designed, and this is a sequel of sorts. This is a successor spiritually, and in some ways directly, because it's a Serac, the same archlich, has hopped planes. He's gone from Greyhawk over to the Forgotten Realms, and he's made another crazy dungeon. It's dangerous. I just want to point that out again, and that's not for every party. Now, as if that weren't dangerous enough, and I am not making this up, Tomb of Annihilation includes an optional meat grinder mode. And the book says if you're going to do the meat grinder mode, do it from the very beginning on. But it's an optional meat grinder mode. And in this mode, saving throws, death saving throws, require a roll of 15 or higher to succeed, as opposed to the usual roll of 10 or higher. And meat grinder or not, even whether you use the meat grinder or not, the introduction also includes a section on how to handle replacement characters. So, do you get the point? Tomb of Annihilation wants to basically annihilate characters. This is a dangerous adventure. It sounds fun. It sounds incredibly fun, and reward or fortune favors the bold and all that. But it's very likely that players could die in this adventure, even more so than some of the others. Any D&D adventure is dangerous on a certain level, but this one I think is a little bit more dangerous than average. So here's stuff that gives me jungle fever that I've just got to mention that doesn't really fit into any other category or whatever. Tomb of Annihilation has a lot of cool stuff. It really makes me want to play it. I need some aspirin because I've got jungle fever. Check this amazing stuff out. There's jungles, dinosaurs, undead, jungles filled with dinosaurs and undead. Pendleton Ward from Adventure Time consulted on this per Chris Perkins's forward, and Chris says he kind of makes it's crazy and dangerous, but there's also these almost like comical moments of trying to escape death. There's dancing monkey fruit. Yes, that's right. It's a fruit called dancing monkey fruit. Now this next, I can't even barely handle this next one. There's dinosaur racing. I will say that again. Dinosaur racing.
Dinosaur racing.
All right. Dinosaur races, racing with dinosaurs, like the dinosaurs are racing against each other with jockeys. That right there is worth the price of admission alone. And there's also right there in the book, right where it's talking about dinosaur racing, there's a handy table for placing bets on dinosaur races. I mean, if that doesn't get you excited, I just stop watching right now. I mean, that tells you this is cool. This is cool stuff. There's also, I'm so giddy about this I can barely even say it, an undead Tyrannosaurus Rex that spews zombies from its gaping mouth while it's chasing you. That is so cool. There's a magical battle axe named Bob. Yep, Bob. Bob the magical battle axe. I showed you that big fold-out map of Cult that has two sides, one for the DM, one for the players. There's a stat block, and I sent a tweet to Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford and didn't hear anything back. But to see if this is the first time this has ever actually been officially published. But there's a stat block for that world-renowned, somewhat reliable scribe Volo. That's right, Volo of Volo's Guide to Whatever fame. He's in this. There are trickster gods that can inhabit the characters, and that actually might be key to the adventure, but you'll have to play it to find out or run it. There's an entire appendix, not just a table or two, an entire appendix dedicated to random encounters. I guess because Cult is its own, such a unique area. And these encounters are not adjusted to character level, so running may be required on behalf of the player characters, which I love. There's a table, this is so cool, there's a table with story hooks for select character backgrounds. That's really nice. So it's just like, there's a table that says if the character background is this for this player or this character, then the story hook could be this. And I love that. That's really cool. There's a dramatis personae, dramatis persona. You know, the table talking about these are the important NPCs that you'll meet. But it's got, and I love this, a pronunciation guide. For example, you know, the archlich, Acererak, which I would say Acererak, is actually pronounced Acererak. So if there's hard to pronounce names, there's a pronunciation guide, which I love. I'm probably pretty sure they're doing that because on Twitter a lot of the times I'll see the D&D folks, people are asking them, how do I pronounce this or how to pronounce that? So, but anyway, now you can address Acererak properly right before he annihilates you. He'll probably appreciate that. So, and there's an excuse to jump up and scream, "You're in the jungle, baby! You're gonna die!" in your best Axl Rose impression at any given moment. All right? Welcome to the jungle. Welcome to the jungle. So, all right. Man, I'm sweating. Forget the aspirin. If this is being sick with jungle fever, I don't want to be well. So, the quibbles. Okay, just to be fair, nothing's perfect. The story itself, now, again, I haven't, you know, I've read through and gotten a really good sense of what's going to happen and the tone and all that. So I'm sure there's quibbles like, you know, Out of the Abyss as I ran it. I felt, man, I really wish Gracklestug had been organized differently, or I wish that, you know, the chapter on journeying in the second part with your expedition force had been before you got to Mantle Dareth and all that. But so I'm sure I'll find stuff like that as I go through Tomb of Annihilation, I should say. Not a tome is a book, a tomb is a tomb. But here's the quibbles I have right now. And first, you know, Tomb of Annihilation does have a lot going for it, but I don't think it's fair to just, oh, it's the best thing ever, blah, 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 and not point out stuff that I don't like. But this is more with the D&D line than the adventure itself, and I had similar quibbles with Storm King's Thunder. Again, we get a Forgotten Realms adventure for 5e, and I'm not the only 5e fan wondering, and I'm a fan of 5e. I think it's a great edition of D&D. When's that going to change? I mean, I'm reasonably certain Wizards of the Coast is all in on the Forgotten Realms, you know, from a corporate standpoint, and they're trying to build it out and make it a bit, you know, and it's a safe bet, it's a known quantity, and, you know, we get our tabletop D&D, and the Neverwinter online MMO gets Tomb of Annihilation, and the WizKids minis, it's vertical stack, and blah, blah, blah. As a fan, I don't care. I don't care about the corporate stuff. That's their problem to deal with. As a fan, you know, I want to see some official D&D 5e non-Forgotten Realms stuff. You know, Dragonlance, Greyhawk, you know, and a lot of people want Dark Sun, they want Planescape, they want Eberron, you know, or maybe even a new setting. You know, so getting a little bit, you know, wonder, hey, when are we going to get something that's not Forgotten Realms? Because D&D has a rich history with many settings, and the Forgotten Realms, as large and popular as it is, and I mean, I love Ed Greenwood, super cool dude, you know, but the Forgotten Realms is not D&D itself. I mean, Acererak in the original Tomb of Horrors was actually on Orth of the Greyhawk, but yet the sequel of sorts is here in the Forgotten Realms. So I think there's going to start being, this is my personal feeling, eventually it's going to start being a little bit more of a thing between D&D the corporation and D&D the players. You know, and it's an annoyance for a lot of people this part, but if this keeps up, you know, it might become sort of a little bit of a rift. We'll see. But I know a lot of people, including myself, as good as this stuff is, they're putting out really good stuff. But it's all Forgotten Realms. And yeah, you can put little notes, well, if you want to set it in, you know, Greyhawk, do this, but it's just this little paragraph. Set it here. So I mean, this is obviously Forgotten Realms from beginning to end. So another quibble that I have is Tomb of Annihilation has no index. This is a reference book for running an adventure. and a 250-something page one too. This needs an index. I found myself just getting ready for the review, trying to find it. Where do I find this? Where do I find that? And a table of contents, even a very comprehensive table of contents, is not an index. And basically all the 5e books, I think the core books like Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, I think that they have indexes. But the adventure books, and I think the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide and Volo's Guide to Monsters, I'm pretty sure none of those have an index. And I really think that that's, not good. We need it. We need an index. I don't know why. That maybe it takes too much time. Maybe there's not enough room. Maybe they're already running out of room in the books or whatever. But these are, at their core, these are reference books. They need an index, and I think it's time that we started getting indexes in these books. Okay, the question of the hour. Tomb of Annihilation, should you buy it? All right. As with my other reviews, if you've never seen one of my other reviews, I'll explain. I try not to offer a one-size-fits-all answer, because that potentially sells the product short, and as well as it fails to acknowledge that there's a wide spectrum of gamer types in our hobby, right? So here's a spectrum of recommendations, and this is as fair as I can be about it. If you like jungle movies, dinosaurs, undead, and player character survival optional adventures like Tomb of Horrors or Dead and Thay, Tomb of Annihilation is straight up your cup of strong tea. Go grab it. You're going to enjoy it. If you and your players are open to something different, adventurous in their taste, one might say, and can handle a higher than average degree of pressure and lethality, pick it up. Again, there's a lot of pressure on the players, and this could be a very lethal adventure, so I want to stress that again. But if your players can handle that, a little bit adventurous, want to try something different maybe, pick it up. Now, if you or your players don't enjoy a high lethality adventure with that constant pressure, or they don't like the prospect of having their head bitten off by an extremely rude archlich at the last minute after they work their butts off to get to the end, Tomb of Annihilation is not for you or your players. If your players are really attached to their characters and they get upset when they die, I don't think this is going to be the adventure for them. And probably for you, because then you're going to have to deal with upset players. If you like more traditional D&D type adventures, your garden variety, medieval inspired, high fantasy with kings and princesses and this and that, which I personally enjoy very much. I'm a Tolkien guy. And you're most comfortable with that kind of adventure, I'd recommend probably giving this one a pass. As cool as dark jungles teeming with dinosaurs and undead are, and an evil archlich and all that, and a tomb designed to kill you, basically, for the archlich's amusement and because he wants your soul, it's not the fantasy everyone wants or can get into, and that's cool. That's totally cool. If you are looking for a cult source book, the Jungle of Cult, Jungle Peninsula of Cult, rather than intense adventure, Tomb of Annihilation probably isn't for you. I mean, there is a lot of good information in here about cult, and cities and cults, and personalities and cults, and things like that, creatures, all that. But it's not a source book, okay? It's an adventure. It's not the Sword Coast. It's not the Jungle of Cult Adventurer's Guide, like the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. In fact, many of the stat blocks, as I mentioned earlier, out of these 59 monster and NPC stat blocks, a lot of them are from Volo's Guide to Monsters. So, which I think is cool, because Volo's isn't a core rule book. So I think if you're going to use those same monsters in an adventure, you should reprint them. Finally, if you want something different from the standard Forgotten Realms, Sword Coast, or you are yearning for a more offbeat setting like, Dark Sun or Eberron or Planescape or something like that, Tomb of Annihilation might be for you. It's not a completely new setting, but it is just different enough to maybe scratch that itch. And it sure ain't the Sword Coast, Chuckles. I mean, it's not the Sword Coast. There's stuff in here that would make the hardy adventures of the Sword Coast scream running home like little girls to their mommies. So, there it is. Tomb of Annihilation in a nutshell. Help, help. I'm in an oversized nutshell. I like it a lot. I'm going to run it. I'm glad I own it. And I think there's a lot of other people out there that will like it as well. But I do think it's not going to be for everybody. There's going to be people that are going to get frustrated by the danger, and it's different. It's just different enough from standard, so Forgotten Realms type stuff that some people may not get into it. But I think it's cool, and I think that the D&D team, the 5e D&D team, continues to put out high quality products, and this is another one. So thanks for watching the Shane Plays review of Tomb of Annihilation. Please leave this video a thumbs up and a comment, if you will. That helps me tremendously, and please consider subscribing to the channel, and we will catch you next time on Shane Plays.